Hello, and welcome to the Tenfold AI podcast. I'm Heather. This is Matt. This is a podcast where we talk about how to get a 10x return from an AI decision, how to avoid shiny object syndrome, and especially if you're a business owner, how to navigate the sometimes confusing, overwhelming world of this AI buzz, grab hold of it, and actually benefit from it. This podcast is sponsored by Promode.ai, which happens to be our company that we founded. Promode.ai is the first ever AI-powered marketing engine, marketing platform specifically built for mid-market B2B companies to replace a marketing agency or a robust internal marketing team for less than the cost of a part-time hire. Powered by AI, fueled by you. How about that?
That's great. You sound like somebody who just got back from closing on a house.
We buttoned up the last button of our merging families, husband and I. He sold his house, I sold my house, we bought a new house. So today closed on the sale of my house, which is, a months long journey of all these different transactions and close calls and ups and downs. I'm sure most folks can relate to that. And yeah, it's nice to have it done.
Yeah. I think, to jump right into the technology talk, when I think of an industry that is like, will have the greatest disruption from technology like smart contracts, blockchain, and large language models and AI, that is one that is just ripe for the picking. Every time I think about it, I'm like, yeah, that's clearly going to be the first industry to be fully disrupted by this technology. I mean, if you think about,
No,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, to dip into that, like the whole real estate, disruption thing, I agree, but I was a realtor years ago and got out of the real estate game for many reasons, but one of them was I felt like there was a huge disruption coming then. And that was almost a decade ago. And that was right when like Redfin was starting to gain some traction, especially on the coasts, like on the West Coast, where you'd have these fixed fee, low rate realtors doing great work, like 3% or maybe even less, 1.5% commission brokers, managing those deals. And it seemed like the trajectory was it would become far more transactional, less relationship based, less personality based on the realtor part, and a lot more of like a digitally fueled transaction, which was a big reason why I got out of real estate back then. And I think this kind of dovetails nicely into some things I've been hearing about this week in AI, which is just what is the adoption rate going to be? Because those of us who might have a finger on the pulse of AI or work in AI, I think some of us are like, where's the adoption? Like, why aren't more people grabbing hold of this? But it's like with any technological advancement, any new invention, you just never know what that adoption rate is going to look like. And it always surprises somebody. Like, it's surprising how fast it's adopted, or it's surprising how slowly it's adopted. And many voices I'm hearing in the AI space are talking about a lagging adoption of AI. And I certainly feel that with real estate, because I thought 10 years ago, this whole game would have changed. But I think the reason it hasn't is homes, especially residential real estate, is just such a highly emotional transaction, buying or selling. Anyway,
I agree
that's,
with, no, I'm with you. I think there is something about, especially, I mean, in the United States, that is everybody's largest asset is their home. And so I agree with you. I'm less convinced that the actual like realtor, you're meeting with somebody, you're walking through a house, you're getting their intuition. You're essentially trying to validate the purchase of your largest asset. So I think that that is probably one of the last dominoes to fall, if at all. But
Mm.
hey, where I think is an interesting place to look is if you think about all of the segments of that transaction, all of the people, the title company, the financing, the running a credit report. I mean, like those are tiny little micro transactions that are a few $100, are, that just for these really like simple things. I mean, there's like it's a boilerplate legal contract that exists.
Mhm.
It is 99.9% the same for every home that's ever purchased. But so that's like clearly an area where like there are certain areas where you should not trust an AI attorney when you're dealing with millions of fully boilerplate, fill in the blank legal contracts. That's perfect for an AI attorney. Like there's no reason that there needs to be a legal department in any of these, in any of these companies. And then what I find really interesting about like smart contracts and blockchain, not really AI, but AI adjacent in that technology is like it's crazy that there's a title company. When we have when blockchain exists, why is there a title company? Like, why is that a thing that needs to happen?
Interesting.
Smart contracts open up the possibilities for like legit seamless owner financing. Um, there's it just like if those tiny little like nonsense boilerplate filling out paperwork, those types of things get replaced, it really does open up a significant amount of possibilities for real estate. But yeah, the thing where it's like, okay, I need a human to walk in here and look at this house with me and tell me it's a good investment. That's a lot would have to change in our approach to for that to occur. But I do think there's
For
all of
sure.
these tiny little things that are just slivers of the transaction that get whacked off throughout the process that can just be done super easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like any of these industries that are being disrupted by, for marketing, it's companies like ProMode. For, HR, there's solutions coming up. I just met an AI founder last night, really sharp younger guy here in Kansas City, who he and his business partner have built a sort of matchmaking platform for recruits for hiring, specifically in trades, so construction, manufacturing, and even more specifically refugees. So refugees, immigrants entering the labor pool. And so they're taking data feeds from these refugee centers that are kind of intaking people, creating some sort of profile about their skill sets and experience. And then he is using their platform to match them with employers who need those skills. It's like any of these kind of industry specific AI platform solutions. I feel like the 101 of it, like the basic foundation is the same, where you have someone looking at a broken system where there's inefficiencies and bottlenecks and drag, and you're saying, how can AI come in and do this better and streamline everything? And then it also happens to usually be much cheaper, which is kind of like the byproduct of, it's not necessarily our number one goal is to save the end user money. I mean, that wasn't my number one goal. My number one goal was, can we make a more efficient, more pleasant, more effective solution for companies to handle their marketing? And then, oh, by the way, it also happens to be a whole hell of a lot less money.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think if someone pointed that laser at the whole real estate transaction process with that same kind of approach, for sure it could be disrupted.
So the founders of this matchmaking company, do they have like a cool Swipe right, swipe left.
I don't know what their interface is like, but they're getting some big checks written to them from some big Kansas City construction companies who are excited about what they're doing.
That's cool. Yeah, I love it. It opens up the door to just solve, it opens the door to solve problems holistically. That to me is like just that soup to nut solutions are around the corner, and interestingly enough, like the limitations, I mean, one of the things that we're encountering with pro mode is that the limitations are really like, what am I trying to say? Like changing the concept of what it means to have this problem solved. You know what I mean? Like all of the potential solutions are now wide open, but trying to shift people's mindset to like, no, like you just need to know how you want this. How do you want this problem solved? What do you want this to be?
Mhm.
And that is like surprisingly the biggest hurdle that we experience is that the consumer is so used, they're so accustomed to being bottlenecked into this fixed half solution that has always been there. That's all they've ever known. So they're
Mhm.
to interfacing with this problem in that way. And so now it's like, you're having to show people, kind of like elevate the potential solutions in your mind. Like really think about what do you want out of your business? How do you want this to look? And, even with the HR platform, like you're talking about there, all of a sudden, if you're using AI, you can begin to introduce concepts like company culture into the mix. I was referenced this before. I've got a close friend that builds data centers on a massive fucking scale. And I talked to him about like what are the challenges with, I mean, these are crazy technical problems. He's managing teams of hundreds of people all around the globe. And he's like, yeah, culture is just, it's the problem. That's the hardest problem that we solve is our company culture. He's kind of talking about how he approaches it. But with a platform like you're talking about here is like you can begin to introduce the idea of cultural fit as you are doing your recruiting efforts. And it is, I mean, yeah, you can put on a job posting like we value hard work and integrity and blah 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 blah. But like, okay, cool. You're not really filtering applicants that way. But now if all of a sudden you're using AI to filter applicants and whatever, you can begin to introduce variables into the mix that you've always wanted to solve for, but just couldn't because of the present day solutions. So it introduces this AI introduces this new problem of like the end user having a keen idea of what are some core problem sets that they want to solve for. And that's difficult. People just can't, it's tough to wrap your mind around that.
Yeah.
You're smiling, you got something good.
Well, I was just looking up the person I met last night because I was going to give a shout out to his company, and it looks like he may have another job on the side that his LinkedIn is positioned to, you know, but this was very cute. If I share my screen, can you see it here? This is a
Mhm.
LinkedIn, this is a total like aside, but I think you would like this. We can kind of digest it together. This was something he posted or reposted on LinkedIn, kind of pointing to, if your core data, which could be your database, it could be your prompt, right? If what you're starting with is shit, then whatever you add to it will just be another form of shit. It's cute. We like that.
It is so true. Yeah.
I'm sure you're thinking of many
Oh
real
my
life
goodness.
examples of that.
Too many. I'm thinking of too many real life examples.
Yeah,
I live too close to recent memory to comment
I
on
feel
them.
ya. Yeah, yeah, but I met another woman here in Kansas City several months ago, and I'm introducing her to a large Kansas City company with her product. They do HR. It's an AI product for HR, for culture. So with their product, and this kind of gets into, I guess an area of debate of, privacy and Big Brother kind of stuff, but their platform embeds itself into the back end of a company, usually large headcount companies, like 10,000 plus global companies, and analyzes everything their employees are saying. Every Slack message, every email, everything. And it anonymizes all of that data so that you're not calling out individuals, because that's not the purpose of the tool. But the purpose is using AI um, to rank sentiment and employee satisfaction and all of these different data points that matter to an employer, um,
Mhm.
layered with, you know, empirical HR data of sure, and I'm kind of guessing at some of this, but you know, how statistically probable is this person to leave or this set of people to leave if they have this issue over a long period of time? Like they're doing some big data analysis on the back end of all of this. But, she's highly disruptive to the HR space, but not just the HR space, also, culture consultants and culture teachers that want to come in and share their bits and bobs about HR. It's like, what do you have on a tool like this that can give
Mhm.
actionable insight? So they're called Culture View. I do know the name of their company, Culture
Very,
VUE.
like all cultural things, it comes down to the fascinating thing about that, right? Is when I think about the users of a tool like that, we know intuitively that cultural issues are a leadership issue, right? So what happens when leadership in charge of observing that sentiment analysis is faced with the reality that leadership is the problem? I mean, that will be the inevitable. If a cultural issue is found, when you start tugging on that thread, it's going to be like, okay, what do we do?
Yeah, right. Well, it's kind of like I'm thinking of like parenting, parenting books and tips on parenting. And a lot of it is about, how to manage your children. And very seldom do they encourage parents to turn that around on themselves and analyze, well, maybe I'm on my phone too much. And maybe that's why my kids are on their damn phones too much, like because we're the ones buying the parenting book. You don't want to alienate your buyer in your message and say, hey, parent, maybe it's because you're a piece of shit that your kid's being a piece of shit. And it's kind of the same thing in the corporate culture space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yesterday we were kind of like going back and forth, and one of the topics for today's episode that we talked about was like, you know, things that maybe piss us off a little bit, in the AI space or in general. Um,
So in
so
the mood for this conversation.
let's do it. Let's just be negative. That feels nice. We don't need to polish this turd.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta have a good bitch fest about something.
Let's be okay. I want to kind of interview you a little bit. So I want to let's talk about the AI honeypot. So you
Bring it on.
so for context, earlier this week you showed me a website that was like very misleading in that there's going to be a hot chick that answers the phone when you call.
Yeah.
Clearly an AI generated. You had enough insider information to know that this is bullshit. But so, and then I started like looking into this, and I'm realizing that a lot of LinkedIn requests that you get are going to be from super hot AI honeypots, right? before we get into the AI version of it, I do want to like talk to me about that in a real life scenario
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
sales. Like, what is that? I mean, I think that we all kind of are aware of the most obvious stereotypical like medical device sales,
Yeah.
pharmaceutical reps. We know what's going on in real life, but talk to me about that broadly. This is a world you come from, one that I'm not familiar with. So yeah,
Yeah, and I'm one thing I love about being a business owner is I kind of can say whatever the hell I want.
fuck yeah,
Like, I'm not trying to be offensive and I'm not a sociologist or, take my opinion for just that. It is my opinion. This is my observed world that I'm describing. So, yes, for years we've all seen the medical device sales, the secretary in a big fancy office is usually, not always, attractive, right? The pencil skirts, the high heels, the 22-year-olds, whatever. And it's usually water cooler chat about, do you think she was hired just because of XYZ? There's no way to know for sure if that chick was hired just because of her looks. And, if you're going to be a fairly optimistic person without a completely cynical view of the world, you're going to say, I'm going to assume that she was hired based on her skills and that she just happens to also be very attractive. Cool. And it's good for that female to also have that perspective. It's good for her mental, wherewithal and well-being to assume that she was hired based on her skills. Because I think if a person thinks that they were hired based on their skills, it will encourage them to get even better at those skills, right? Like, this is the value I bring to this workplace. So this is the qualities I'm going to continue to advance in myself. And that's good for everybody, right? And then that girl who may have, if we're being completely honest, maybe her looks didn't hurt in the process. And maybe another candidate was a little more skill heavy than she was. But if she carries herself in a way that says, I was hired because I'm really good at what I do, she is going to naturally get even better at what she does and add more value and grow into that professionally. And that's not a bad outcome, right? For her employer or for her professionally. But there is no way to know 100% for sure unless you've got a real idiot hiring manager who admits that that's why he hired her, right? There's no way to know for sure that that's the only reason she was hired. Would you agree with that?
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And you could say, hey, I happen to notice all of your female employees are very attractive and none of your male employees are attractive at all, which I have seen in many, many companies, especially in the mid market. It's really funny. But still, you can't empirically say that the only reason those women, even if there's 10 of them, were hired is because they're attractive.
Hmm.
Now we get to AI generated honeypots. And I get fired up about this because the decision makers who are often men who are saying, go make me 30 pretend employees who are AI robots and make them super hot and go send connect requests to all of our prospects and then have pretend conversations with these AI bots to our prospects to try to generate a lead. Or in the case of the website I saw this week, it went even beyond that because it was an image of a woman who does not exist on a lead gen website, encouraging prospects to reach out to her. So it's not an AI chatbot with a face, like talk to Erica from Bank of America with a hot picture, which Bank of America does not do. Her name is Erica, but they don't use a picture of a woman.
Not hot, I could tell you.
Right, right. Yeah, but it's not an AI chatbot. This is a call to action to call a person named this. Here's her face, here's her email address, here's her phone number. That person does not exist. In fact, I know who owns this website. I have their phone number in my phone. I was like, is that his cell phone number? I look it up. It is his cell phone number on this lead gen website with this female's name and an AI generated image of a hot chick. Here is what decision makers, business leaders like that are doing. They are showing their hand because no longer can they say, we just hired her because of her skills, because she doesn't exist, right? You've generated the part of the female employee that you think is valuable, and it's being hot. Disgraceful, disgusting, and disgraceful. Oh, yeah, I'm so shook about it. Um, and I made a LinkedIn post about it. It did not go well, but I don't care. It is what it is. The end, like at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, if you are using AI, if you're thinking we're we're going to really lean into AI, we're really doing something here. We're going to get ROI from AI. What are we going to do? Oh, I know. We're going to generate a bunch of hot chicks on the internet who don't exist, lie to our potential customers, trying to lure them into transacting with us, and then pass that lead to whoever is in your employee, in your employment pool to run that lead and close it. I hope it's a short plank you're walking off of as a business owner because you deserve it. Because what you're doing to your employees whose face you're not using is telling them they don't have what it takes to get the job done. What you're doing to your female employees is telling them the only reason we hired you is because you're hot. And you're proving it by generating fake hot chicks who add no value other than being fake hot. And you're not benefiting from AI at all in any meaningful way that's respectable. Right. And that's the frustrating part as, in our space is, hey, there's some really slick ways to benefit from AI right now. Forget about that. That's a cheap tactic. Like, let's level up here. What do you think? Am I overreacting?
This is an area of then the optimist in me, right? So this thing exists. This phenomenon that we're discussing exists with or without AI because the market allows it, because it works. Like the bottom line, or it wouldn't be done. It wouldn't be as common. It wouldn't be a trope if it wasn't effective, right? Like it would just get weeded out of a free market if it weren't. But I think that now the fact that you don't have to hire that person and don't have to come under that level of scrutiny, to me, it opens the gate for us to wrestle with this phenomenon. Is this really what we're about? Is this how we want to do business? Is it like how little confidence do we have in our product to where this is how we need to sell it? And
Yeah.
it becomes known amongst, I mean, again, like we're seeing this record, like our first like super like what's the word? Stereotypical example we used was a drug rep, right? Okay, well, we are now on the tail end of that running rampant for the last 35 years, and we have fentanyl on the back end of it. Like, you know what I mean? We will see just the vacuousness of all of these business activities where the product or the service underneath the hood is fully empty or perhaps detrimental. And the product or the way it's delivered or the UX is so poor that we need to put this facade on.
Hmm.
That's the thing that we're going to see. We will have an opportunity to recognize who has real skills, who can really deliver, and who needs to package their shit up in some fucking nonsense. And I think
Hmm.
our lot of people, like again, we are sort of at the critical mass of this. I think yesterday you and I, okay, I'm going to move on to the thing that fucking pisses me off is Hustle culture business gurus are fucking morons. They're the worst. It
Yeah.
is like, and this is an example. I talk about this all the time. Machine learning and recommender systems on social media platforms have been around since 2017. They've existed before anybody listening to this has ever logged into ChatGPT. You have been influenced. AI has been used on you. You have used it. And the result of it are these morons that really like, I mean, none of these people could step into an operating company, take a look at the P&L and start to make any changes on it. And it's like, well, if you hustle and you grind hard enough, whatever, and like it gives this crazy perception. This is probably the male version of the thing that we're talking about, where it's like it, and you experience this where you enter into a room and you see like if a man can demonstrate enough bravado to where there's no air in the room, that's like people buy shit from that guy. Like that's the crazy thing. It exists because it works. And I think what is going to happen is all of a sudden you're going to have these early 20 somethings who have this belief that like hustle equals business success. And then you get a few years into it and you realize that you have to have actual skills to do this. You know what I mean? Like, what do you
Yeah.
like? Oh, you have to assemble a team of 50 people to run your company. Have fun, dude. You have to write an employee handbook. No amount of like hustle TikTok videos. You have to sit down. There's a blank fucking piece of paper, write an employee. What are the procedures? When do people clock in and out? Like these very real things that you have to consider if you're going to be running a business.
Yeah. Wait, do you mean there's more to running a successful business than getting up at 4 in the morning and lifting weights? Mushroom supplements? Yeah. Well, I think that, and I love Joe Rogan. We're not talking about Joe Rogan, but the type of person you're talking about are like, buy 10 rental houses before you're 30 years old. And I love the riffs off of that, like the satire on TikTok where it's like cut to, and then the guy's like, why not buy 30 rental houses before you're 30 old? Why not buy 100 rental houses before you turn 20? It's like, what are we talking about? It's like you're pretending to give financial success advice, but there's no actual substance to it. There's no actual wisdom there. But I think the parallel to what that culture is the MLM mom culture, like, which started even before the hustle bro culture. And the MLM mom culture is like, just go sell to all your friends at the park when you have your kids there and you're trying to raise your children or, you know, manage your household. Go sell to your friends and neighbors our product, leverage your personal relationships. Risk your personal relationships to grow our company. And then we're going to lie to you and tell you you're a business owner. You're not a business owner. You're an You're an unpaid rep. You're a commission only rep for a company that will probably not exist in 5 years.
Yeah, you have one tax return. That's how the business.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's both of those, philosophies of whatever that is, the bro culture and the MLM mom culture, they prey off of the same type of people. And that's the sad part. They prey off of desperate, ill equipped people who usually don't have a lot to risk and they're looking for a leg up and they put their trust in these people and usually lose a lot of money and valuable time chasing down these imaginary dreams.
You
And
said something.
it's very incestuous. Just one more thing, it's like very incestuous. It's like the coaching guru teaching you how to sell coaching so that you can teach other people how to sell coaching to teach other people how to sell coaching. And at some point it's like we're all just coaching and it's an MLM because the guy at the top is making the most for his coaching, and then it dilutes down to where it's someone who's selling coaching for very little in a pyramid. It's not a pyramid scheme, it's a triangle plan, as I like to.
Yeah. It's so you said something to me yesterday, and I always like
Oh, I love this thing. Yeah.
one of my favorite. It's like just a real concept to live by. So it's the Dunning-Kruger effect is that you have like early on when you're starting from zero, any amount of any amount of experience or success that you have is going to be purely based off ignorance. You just don't know. You have not been doing a thing long enough to know how deep the waters are. Like waters get deep in anything that you do, like anything that you pursue or want to learn about, or even in business, it is like there are people that have been doing this for 20 years. You know what I mean? And so the weird part is that the earlier you are, you end up on this peak up here. And so if that peak is reinforced by hustle culture instead of, hustle culture, you're not going to sell a lot of fucking programs if you're really like honest about what does this look like over 10 years. Because
Yeah.
again, like it's using the example of like an employee handbook. Okay, cool, you want to hustle, grow a business, whatever. You're going to hire your first person, and then you're going to realize what payroll taxes are. You're going to be like, oh, what, I have to pay payroll taxes on this. I have to submit an I-9 for this person. I need a handbook for them. I need to tell them what to do. I need to plan every hour of every day, every week, like, oh shit. I actually, and then the first time people encounter that, it is like a pit of despair for them. They're like, oh shit, this sucks. But then you realize, then you've done that thing. And then you kind of like slowly begin to crawl out of this depth of despair right here. The problem is that as people gain more and more experience and more knowledge, and they truly are moving up this path, they tend to not tell these people up here that they're fucking idiots. That's the and these people like if you're like right here, okay, so like let's say you've done a thing for 10 years, like consistently for 10 years, right? Like I practice this thing every day for 10 years. You're probably like right here. Like expert level, they say takes like 20 years of like 10,000 hours and something. If you actually calculate how many hours 10,000 hours is, you're like getting here like between 13 and 20 years into anything is when
Hmm.
a lot of people are like really confused how like just do the math. There's however many hours in a week, how many hours are you spending actually doing that thing? It's a
Yeah.
long ass time. So, we were commenting yesterday, kind of people in this zone tend to not be very loud because they know how deep the waters are. And if you're
Yeah.
like hanging out in here, it means that you're routinely in rooms where like you are low person on the totem pole, which is a very important is like if you are not in circles of people that you're intimidated to be in, you're on like Mount Ignorant, if that is the case. If you are
Totally.
just constantly so sure of yourself, you likely have not put in the reps to do that thing, you know? Like, okay, a great example to illustrate this is so like I don't talk perfect example. So I don't talk about it much, but like I do jujitsu. I've been doing jujitsu for like 7 years now. Okay. So I have been a purple belt for 2 years. What that means for the person that doesn't understand is like as a 2 year purple belt, like I could disarm like 99% of police officers that do not train martial arts. Like I could just control them, take their weapon. I mean, like, I'm not advocating for this. I never want to do it, but like
Yeah.
legitimate.
What are you going to do this weekend?
But like it is a crazy thing how like, and really you're kind of able to do that after like 4 years of doing like it is pretty much any physical altercation that you would ever find yourself in with a person who does not train any martial arts, could just hold like control them like a baby. I mean, it's a crazy thing. But the thing is that the reason I never talk about it is because I go and I train with people that have been doing it for 20 years. And it's
Mhm.
and they throw me around like a child. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Weird thing. It's like I go into this place where I am middle of the pack, get my fucking ass handed to me constantly by people who have been doing it longer. And I step outside the door and I don't think like, oh, I just entered an environment where I am like by a long shot top dog. Like it's almost comical how like just putting hands on an untrained person, you can really just treat them like a baby, really.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly in an environment where you're middle of the pack at best, you tend to then step and you do that routinely, you tend to step out into the real world and still have that perception of your skill level. And so I would say that like, if you haven't been doing something consistently for years and years and years and you're talking about it, you're probably a fool. And if you're not talking about it and you've been doing it for years and years and years, you're probably on the upswing of that Dunning-Kruger effect, in which case you should probably begin to develop the confidence to say, like, like just be an expert, like not maybe a 20-year expert, but like, okay, I know enough about this thing to be able to talk about it confidently.
That's a great analogy with the martial arts, and I've heard Joe Rogan talk about that in a similar way. Like it keeps you humble in a way that is very, very healthy. Because yes, you're very competent in that skill compared to most people, but you're also very aware of how competent someone can be compared to you in the other direction. And you don't mess with that because you could actually die, which is why, like, people who are trained in martial arts are usually the least likely to get into a street fight because
Oh,
they're
they're the
like,
most past. What?
yeah, they're like, no, I'm not going to get into a street fight because there is a chance that that dude, you know, has 4 years on me or 10 years on me in this discipline. And I know what this discipline can lead to in terms of skill, accumulation. And I'm not messing with it.
Mm.
Whereas the guy at the peak who's like, yeah, man, I bought this video, like, what's it, Napoleon Dynamite, or what was his name? And
Rico.
gosh, well, no, the guy with the flag pants on who sells, no, the martial arts guy. He goes to the martial arts school to learn how to do. It's going to dawn on me later, but he steps into his dojo and tries to teach him stuff, and I don't know, it's just funny. But another world where this is also a thing, and I think the same parallel can apply, is pilots. I have been around a lot of pilots in my life for some reasons, and I'm very familiar with their training trajectory from beginner pilot to professional commercial pilot, fighter pilots, that whole thing. That peak of ignorance is highly monitored in the world of pilots, because if you are arrogant and think you're more skilled than you are, you will die. Like, there is no room between you and the reality of your decision. Very similar to martial arts in that way, right? Your teacher is gravity in the world of pilots, and that teacher will remind you real quick just how competent you are not. If you go, there's a line in Top Gun, your ego's writing checks your body can't cash. Right? It's a famous line from that movie, and we use it in our house all the time. But there's certain disciplines like being a pilot, martial arts. I would say in medicine that there are some of those, right? Because if you're a surgeon and you're cutting people open, you you cannot be so confident as to mess it up, which is also a highly monitored process with people who are more experienced than you, watching you, making sure you're ready, monitoring your mental state throughout that whole process. And in the business world, where things are less monitored and anybody can start a marketing company or be a hustle guru, like there is not that level of monitoring. And you're right, like people who are farther down that road tend to just distance themselves from people who are at that peak of ignorance. Because it's like, well, I don't want anyone to think I am like them at all. So I'm not even going to affiliate with them, and we see that happening around us from time to time. Just last night, someone asked if I was part of a certain group with AI people here, and I said no because we know what they're about. It's kid stuff compared to what we're doing here. And not that I'm, you know, the ultimate expert on AI. I'm absolutely not. But there is that, like, I don't want people to confuse what we're doing with what that is because it is a completely different thing. But this whole conversation just highlights to me the importance of mentorship. Like you have to have mentors in business who are further down the road and, you know, who can humble you and say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about in that
Right.
respect, or watch out for this around the curve. You're not taking certain things into account. I know I need that in business, but yeah, it's interesting. But I do think that AI and how information is flowing will ultimately help remove the bullshit.
That's a segue. I've got my next segment on things that are pissing me off. This is going to be the AI version of it. Broadly speaking, I find myself like, I probably need to just tone it down. I need to like tune it out a little bit, but I get very upset when people don't grasp, I don't, it's not necessarily people not grasping how AI works or what it does on a technical level, but just broadly, like, what are the real threats this thing poses? What are the real opportunities? And just what are the real capabilities of it? To just broadly be able to see those things in accurate buckets. And I'm probably like very easily triggered by this because it's a thing that I like really love. Like I'm very passionate about it. I think when you shared with me that honeypot thing, I was like, I remember thinking like, how could you reduce such a beautiful technology to just nonsense? It was the second thing I was most upset about was like the honeypot aspect of it. But like my primary thing I was upset about was just like, you could use this for so much, and this is what you choose. This is a Travis. Okay. So in that vein, one thing that really bothers me is when I hear creatives and artists um, worried about AI, like copyright or stealing or anything like that really bothers me because it is just a fundamental misunderstanding, not only of like the creative pursuit, but a misunderstanding of the technological capabilities in and of itself. Art from an economic standpoint is like the more scarce it is, the more valuable it is. So in a weird way, if you're worried about your art being devalued, you should actually want a bunch of AI facsimiles of it. Because then all of a sudden, if all of a sudden there were 100 pieces of art in the marketplace as a result of AI, there are 100,000 pieces of art in the marketplace, and only 100 pieces are original. The value of the original piece will go up. It's like diamonds. You know what I mean? That's the first like obvious economic piece is that like you should not be worried about your art being ripped off. It will increase the value of it. It will increase the scarcity of it. If all of a sudden
Yeah.
can be, if any art can be had with 2 lines of prompting, then all of a sudden art that is not generated from 2 lines of prompting has a value that is significantly higher than before, right?
Mhm.
Secondly, art and artistic and creative expression is like, it is the intentional use of imperfection. We do not, the things that move us artistically are not the most perfect things. There is a form of art, like, I mean, like Japanese knife making, for example, where the art is in the lack of imperfections. But things like painting, music, all of these things are like intentional breaking of the rules. It's the expression of the human condition, which is inherently flawed. There's the yin
Yeah.
and there's the yang of
I've heard
humanity.
it dis I've heard it described by an a brilliant marketer, Rory Sutherland, who's a brand expert out of London. He says, the best creativity always has an element of irrationality. I love
Exactly.
that.
So yeah, so if AI moves art this direction, humans will move it that direction. It's just that is the nature of artistic expression. Now, but secondly, and to me, this is the most objective part of this, is that just mathematically, it would be impossible to ever recreate these things. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an example of last night. I was writing an ending drum part for a song that I've been working on. And so it's really short. I'm going to play it for you, and I'm going to show you the math that would be required in order for AI to recreate this. So hopefully you can hear it. Okay, that was 8 bars long. Let's look at the math of all potential possibilities. I want to talk about what would be the context window required in order for AI to do that. So I'm going to go over here. So what we're looking at, so it's 8 bars. The song is 120 beats per measure, right? The fastest note that I could play at that tempo accurately is probably like a 16th note triplet, right? So we're like, what we're looking at here is so a whole note would be the slowest or the most like space in between notes that you could play, half notes, quarter notes, et cetera, et cetera. You get all the way down to 16th note triplets. You have 5 drums that you could potentially play that song on. So these are all the available possibilities to write that drum part. So the possibilities come down to 5 to the power of 384. Okay. So this is like the potential. If you're going to ask AI to write an ending to this part, these are the possibilities that I could generate, 5 to 3. And so that would be what AI would need that's the computing power it would need. So what I want to do, let's just for a second look at how many zeros that is. So the top number, this is the number of possibilities that I had available. It's not the exact number, it's just the number of digits of possibilities that I had. Okay. So for me to write 8 bars of one song, these are all the number of potential combinations that I could have done that with.
Mhm.
Currently, the largest context window in all of generative AI is this number. So now this is just not, you're saying, oh, okay, well, that's easy to apply that math to drumming. You can play drums fast. You got 2 hands, 2 feet. Well, okay, if we apply it to painting, okay, let's apply the same thing to painting. A painter has a canvas that they can make lines in 360 degrees on that 2D canvas. In this example, you have 10 different brushes. So you have 10 thicknesses of your lines. And then let's say your color choices, you have 100 different color choices that you can choose from. So this number for painting is 360,000 to the 20th power, far exceeding. I mean, like this, we are talking numbers of possibilities that never would be able to be replicated by AI. Like
Yeah.
the idea that somehow art is threatened by AI is just a simple misunderstanding of mathematics. Like you don't have to
I'm
talk.
thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking of the old monkey and the typewriter.
Yes.
Like if you gave a monkey a typewriter and he typed for all eternity, how long would it take him to accidentally type the Bible?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're saying it's statistically impossible um, for for an AI um, to rip off human art.
No, it can rip off human art. That's the point. Is like can't so AI could replicate that thing that you just listened to.
Yeah.
AI could not create that. And so
Yeah, it could not create
now
the thing you
that
did.
version that you listened to, what was that?
So you're saying it could not create the exact thing you did unless you provided it the exact thing you did, because the statistical opportunities apart from what you did are so vast that it would never land on your creation. Right.
Exactly. I could like I've got 30 different versions of that thing that you just listened to. You know what I mean? So it's like I am always going to be operating from a context window that is millions of times larger than any AI model. And so like there's and so we both know that there's not enough commercial viability in creative expression for these AI models to ever be incentivized to compete on that level. So they just never will. There will never be a commercial incentive for that to happen. So if AI rips off if AI rips off my part that makes the original more valuable and it makes variations on that, like I could in the time that it would take AI to do that, I could come up with 100 other variations of that exact same thing because the potential possibilities that I'm operating with are significantly higher than could ever be produced by generative AI by a long shot. Like it's not even these are numbers that are not even fathomable to us.
Yeah. And I think this is where, people who are excited about AI, but also creative would say, this is how AI fuels creativity, because you can have that spark, that, 1 in 1 trillion, 100 million Elon Musk kid name numbers, idea. And then you can use AI to enhance, refine, move that further down the creative process more quickly. And that's what creatives who are leaning into AI are excited about, right?
Exact. Yes, you hit the nail on the head. If I understand my craft well enough, I know the terminology. I know my thought process when I am being creative, and I can then leverage AI if I want to, or if I want nothing to do with it and I don't like that AI is ripping me off, I'm going to create an intentional mistake. Like I will strategically add a mistake. I'll bend the tempo a little bit. You know what I mean? I'll do a thing that like I would have the ability to do a thing instantaneously that would just cause AI to fritz out. And so
Mm.
like if you can, I mean, like imagine if you're a painter and you paint like the most beautiful, perfect painting, AI, it starts ripping it off and you're like, oh, they're stealing. Imagine the value of your next work if you made that same painting and then you just like made a huge, obvious human error on it. Is that a more valuable painting because it has this apparent human error? It is the most human thing ever, right? Okay, so then let's say AI rips that off. Cool. Create a new human error, right? Like creativity is the expression of new human Yeah, it's just like it's the expression of humanity broadly, right? Which is changing moment to moment. It is new, and that expression comes from like fault, joy, emotion, all of these things to where like any given moment, another facsimile would need to be created from it. But it is a new piece of creation in any given moment that it is coming out. And that is a thing that AI could never do. It just simply does not have the context window to be able to compete with human creativity in that regard.
Mhm.
So yeah, it pisses me off. Creatives, knock it off. Like it's mathematically impossible that you're ever made obsolete. Be thankful when AI rips you off because that means that you have skills, you have notoriety, your original pieces. Like nobody is gonna recreate your fucking painting in Chat GPT and print it off and hang it on their wall. What are you worried about? Is it the commercial value? Is it your ego? Like, what is it that you're worried about? Nobody's going to do that. And you know what? If people start doing that and all of a sudden everybody has the GPT version of your painting printed off and hanging on their wall, motherfucker, guess what? Sell the original for millions of dollars and go do pink cocaine in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
That's the problem.
yeah, I don't know if I'm hearing as much, but I don't talk to a lot of like, you know, true creatives in like the, artists painting things to hang on a wall or career musicians, like entertainment or truly art producers. What I do talk to are a lot of commercial artists. So branding agencies and logo creators, graphic designers who create art with a lowercase a, maybe, I suppose. I don't want to reduce it. They're very talented. There's some very talented people, but they create art on commission for a commercial purpose, writing jingles for commercials or producing commercial videos for companies, making logos, creating websites, and they hang their hat on their creativity as their commodity. And I think many of them are afraid of what AI will bring because people are going to, various AI tools to generate logos and generate websites and generate this and that for their companies as opposed to hiring those branding agencies for that highly creative work. But, what we've talked about as it applies to the commercial spaces, it will cause the top 10% or so of truly creative branding agencies, logo creators, graphic designers, the top 10% will get to increase their prices significantly because they will become highly in demand for that kind of avant garde, truly human, you know, product that they're selling. And then the bottom 80, 90% are AI fodder for, to be replaced by these AI tools that can do it just as good.
You bring up a good point. Yeah, well, if you're going to say, all right, if you have an hourly rate for your art, if you have a guaranteed hourly rate for your art and you receive feedback on it that you then take and apply, I think calling that
It's a good
creativity
way
is
to
a
say
little,
it.
like, so the minute,
Yeah.
so if you put an hourly rate to your art, you receive feedback from the suits on that and you make those changes. Yes, that then all of a sudden we're not trying to recreate the thing that you created. That's no longer, it is at what price can we approximate this? If you want to put a dollar figure per hour to your art, you have opened yourself up to this world. And
That's a
that's the
good
reality.
point.
You're not a creative. Like if you're asking for a guaranteed hourly rate for something, you're not doing it for the creativity. You want to be paid that guaranteed. Right. You know what I mean? There's a difference between those two things.
Very, very good point, Matt. Um, because I just thinking of the people I know who I think are truly creative, who happen to work in marketing for an hourly rate, they would rather be doing their own art. Because they're usually the ones that started off sketching as kids and, went to design school and they had to find a way to make a living. So they apply that skill to this commercial world and they honestly hate it, usually. Like they're miserable in those jobs. Production art, making another graphic for a friggin' trucking company is not their chosen artistic journey. That's just what they do to pay the bills.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, the idea here, I guess the hope for the artist is your actual art will now be more valuable if you choose to work on that because AI can't, as you said before, can't create that human touch, that thing that makes you feel the way your art feels when people look at it. So there's an opportunity for those creatives to kind of introspect and say, okay, I'm going to go all in on myself again and be a true artist.
Uh, Yeah, the value of that will go up. I mean, you bring up a good point. The economy has always uh, given preference. I mean, there's a reason that there's so few working artists is because the commercial value of it is. And so they take this leap where they want a guaranteed hourly rate. They can say that it's artistic expression. So in that case, AI is coming for your hourly rate, not your creative expression. That's the difference there. But I do think that the preponderance of AI generated art makes real human original art more scarce, therefore more valuable. So there probably are a lot more opportunities for these people hucking out shitty tech company logos for an hourly rate. Like there's probably a lot more viability once that world becomes commoditized by AI. The value of real human created art for its own sake will go up because that market becomes more scarce.
Yeah, I love it. Well, just
I
to
gotta get out of here. Sorry.
you have to go.
Well,
Okay.
yeah,
I
I'm
was gonna
looking.
bring it on home with something, but I think we're good.
Yes.
This has been the Tenfold AI podcast. I am Heather. This is Matt. We're the founders of Promo.ai, which also sponsors this podcast. Promo.ai is the first end-to-end AI powered marketing platform that completely replaces a marketing agency for mid market B2B companies in particular. Thank you, Matt, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.